Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams. And today, I'm the founder and principal of Osa Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment.
In today's episode of the Power of Design podcast, we have Amy Johnson. She is principal at Strata Project Management Group. Enjoy it.
Hey Amy, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
I'm good, Jack. How are you?
I'm excellent. How was your day today?
It was busy, as always. So lots of things going on, lots of new projects. So business is great.
I know, good. So Amy, I know you have been a project manager for a while and working in very interesting projects around the city. What would you say is the most important skill a project manager should have?
I would say it's organization, and organization on a couple of different levels. So organization with kind of how a project is run, but also being able to organize and motivate people. Mm-hmm. Because, being a project manager, especially in construction, you've got a lot of players. You've got the owner, you've got the general contractor, you've got the architect, and you have everybody else that kind of ties into that. And organizing them to kind of work together as a team is probably the number one most important skill.
Yeah, and I will think that prioritizing as well, organizing and prioritizing. My daughter is 11 and she's so organized. It's incredible. My sons, they're so disorganized. But you go to her room and everything it's in place, all the drawers, and it's just like by nature. That skill is something that she has. Yeah. Which is something interesting because like nobody's gonna teach you how to be a project manager.
It's kind of a bit inherent for some of the skills. I mean, there's a lot that can be taught and learned, but then there's some things where it's just like you just kind of intuitively know how to organize a team and know how to, motivate people to kind of all move in the same direction and all move towards the same goal, even when things go wrong, because they will. Yeah. And stuff goes wrong all the time, and it's like motivating the team to work together to push the ball forward.
Yes, and I've been at the other side of the table working with project managers, and I'm always impressed how you guys need to work not only very different professionals, but very different personalities. So,
yes.
Every person, they have different motivations, they have different, priorities. So how do you kind of learn how to read the people fast?
We've got to know a little bit about what everybody does. So, no matter what kind of vendor gets brought to the table, whether it be an architect or an engineer, or I've got a project we're actually putting a very large fish tank in, so I'm working with a fish vendor. So you've got to kind of understand a little bit about what everybody's doing and what their role is. And the biggest thing is let them do their jobs and then kind of guide everybody in the same direction and make sure that the client's goals are always top of mind. Where, the client may think, hey, this is very, very important to me. And the general contractor and the architect are like, that's not that big of a deal. But our job is to remind them, this is what's important to the client. This is where we need to excel. And this is where we all need to work as a team to really make a successful project.
Yeah, I have some projects and have done projects where we're working directly for the client. And usually one of my first questions is, you have a project manager? And they said, no, we don't need to spend that money. I got it. And I'm like, oh my God, I know where this is going, because usually people, they have their business that is not related to construction design. They have no idea about it. They think they're saving money by not having somebody manage it. And unfortunately that becomes longer delivery. Right. More expensive, and I've seen disasters.
Yes. Well, and usually we end up saving the client, at least double to 3 times what our fee is.
For sure.
Just in making sure things are on time and making sure they're making the right decisions at the right moments, and we're bringing the right people to the table.
Yeah.
Because clients, at a minimum, maybe they do this every 5 years when they move, but generally the person who did it last time is probably not there.
Yeah.
Or they've never built out a project, or they've built their house, which is a completely different animal than commercial construction, as we all know. So, it's interesting when we meet with clients and they're like, oh, I can do this myself. I don't need to spend the money. And I'm like, well, have you thought about all of these things? Because the general contractor and the architect that's not their job.
Yeah.
These 10 things over here are not their job. You still have to do them for the project.
And unfortunately, as architects, we need to fill in a lot of those gaps when the project manager is not there. We need to think about.
Well, it's not something you guys do every day either.
Right.
So, dealing with cable lane vendors and AV vendors, it's not something you guys do on a regular basis. You coordinate that, but it's not a day-to-day thing.
Sure.
So, so we love coming to take the burden off of you guys.
Yes, thank you. Amy, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town just outside of Roanoke, Virginia called Benton. Lived there all my life. My entire family still lives there. I was the only person to move away and go somewhere else. So I've got one sister and went to Virginia Tech for school. It was the only school I ever wanted to go to. Wanted to go there for architecture and design.
Yeah, it's a good school.
My mother made me apply to other schools because she said you can't do just that. You have to expand. And I ended up going, so I loved it.
So what's your degree?
My degree is in interior design. So
why did you decide to go into interior design?
It was really the interior architecture piece. The program for Virginia Tech was really kind of geared a lot more towards commercial design. And, in exploring the programs, that's what I really loved was kind of that corporate interior design piece. And, the office component and being able to deal with like the interiors, the finishes, the detailing of all of that is what I really loved. So that's kind of what made that decision.
Interesting. And what do you think were your kind of natural, skills that you had that said, okay, I think I'm going to be good at doing this?
I would say it's more on kind of the client side of things. It's, as I kind of progressed through my career, I kind of fell into project management. I, worked for design firms, but I always worked for smaller firms where the interiors department kind of ran itself. And we were kind of almost a division of, and, we were doing, bigger projects and that sort of thing. And there wasn't necessarily always a project architect on board. It was more just, the interiors division did everything because they were smaller firms. So really, going out and doing business development and obtaining clients and gaining their trust and then being able to do multiple projects over and over with them and kind of keeping them throughout the years. That client relationship piece is something I feel like I excel pretty well in. And the whole relationship piece with general contractors and architects and vendors and kind of managing all of those relationships, I feel like I pretty excel at that. So.
Interesting. What was your first job?
My first job, so after I graduated, I moved to Charlotte about 2 weeks later, and I worked at a furniture dealership. And I was doing all of Bank of America's work. So I was put on a team to do nothing but Bank of America churn work.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I would get to do full floor build outs and that sort of thing. And, quickly decided that, furniture is great, but I'm a little bored. I need a challenge.
Sure.
So my boss at the time was like, okay, here's a couple of references and go call these people. And I think you'd be great at these firms. And I got a job at an architecture firm. And then, moved around to a couple of other smaller firms, would kind of work the ladder and, then kind of jump ship and move somewhere else. Don't put in jump ship. So kind of moved around to a couple of different architecture firms to kind of find my spot. And I did that for about 15 years. And it was great at the time. But, after kind of doing that for so long, I was getting more into the management role of things and doing only business development. And I missed projects. I missed being in the weeds of projects. And although my degree is in interior design, I really love the construction aspect of it more. I like seeing something on paper being actually constructed and built.
Yes.
That's really fun.
Yes.
To see it kind of come to life and to see a client's eyes when they walk into their space for the first time and just be like, their eyes lit up and like, this is fantastic. This
Yeah.
is so much better than I expected. So I was kind of put in more of a, business development sort of, management role of managing a team. And, I felt like, I want to do both. Like, I really want to be back into projects.
Nice.
So
Yeah, it's interesting because I heard that a similar stories where interior designers start their career with, furniture dealers, furniture vendors, which is, kind of like the entry to the profession. But they quickly realize if they're thinking about something else or, they want something different, they learn kind of the basics. Because I think you get a lot of basics of, how to do something efficient, how to use CAD, how do you quantify things, how to organize things.
Yes.
So it gives you like a basic, solid foundation of, you know how this works. And the other thing that I've always been very impressed is, at least in the corporate interiors world, how important are the furniture dealers, because their front end in there, they're really good at client relationships, because a person, when they need to expand their office, sometimes the first call is to the furniture dealer. They don't call an architect, they don't call a project manager.
Over the course of their lease, they're always calling that furniture dealer if something breaks or if they need a warranty item or if they need to order another desk. They're always, so they maintain that relationship a lot longer than a lot of the other folks that are involved in the projects.
Yes,
So-
and since they do basic, space planning or CAD or test fits, they keep asking for more.
Yeah.
And until get you to the point, well, you actually need a permit.
Yeah.
You need to do this. And
We
they're
need to
like,
go.
"Oh,
We need to
sorry."
add some people to the team.
Yes, and I've seen some test fits that I know great designers in furniture dealers have put together, but they're not thinking about, code related issues. They're not thinking about the code ramifications of that. I had an experience years ago where a designer decided to just delete the column because that column was in the middle of the
I feel
workstation.
like I did have the same experience. Yeah, we went to install furniture and there was a column right in the middle. I think
Yeah, I've seen
and
that.
It wasn't the same project, but
Yeah.
definitely the same experience.
I remember seeing a floor plan. I'm like, okay, there should be a column here.
Something's missing.
What's going on? And like,
Right.
oh no, it's just was in the way of the workstation.
I just moved it.
Yeah. I'm sure I did something like that before when I was starting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, very interesting, and I completely understand how you feel, because I guess you get to be an interior designer. You start doing all these different tasks, finishing, space planning, construction documents, relating to clients. And that's one of the things that I love about profession, that is so broad that you can use your skills, your strengths, your passion, and focus on an area where you're most effective because it's natural to you.
Yeah, and I feel like as a project manager, having the furniture background and understanding their process, even though it was many years ago, and then having the architectural and design background, I feel like I'm the type of project manager that is going to be sensitive to what the architects and designers are thinking. As I can understand what they're thinking as far as the design process goes and where they're going with it, and be able to translate that from architect speak to client speak, so that they make the clients understand exactly what they're getting. The architect thinks they're explaining it, but it's like there's sometimes a translation issue there
There's a communication
to understand.
gap.
Oh, if you just explain a little bit differently, they kind of understand. And then having done construction administration on the architecture side for projects, kind of understanding that GC world. So I feel like I'm had a lot of varying experiences that help make me the project manager I am today. That can understand design and be sensitive to kind of where they are and the timeframes that you all need to complete a project, because some people think they're very long, but you do need that time.
Yes.
And then on the construction side, just kind of understanding, okay, they need time to put this all together and build it, and lead time issues, and so kind of managing all of that.
No,
So
and we really appreciate that, because you're making the client have realistic expectations.
right.
Sometimes they don't understand it. They don't understand what. Sometimes when I had a meeting this week with a prospect, and I felt horrible because I'm telling him all the things that he doesn't want to hear. Like the project is going to take longer.
Yeah.
The project is going to cost more. It's going to be more complicated. And I'm like, what kind of sales pitch am I doing? Delivering all these bad news, but it's the reality.
Well, and you got to be realistic about it too, because the worst thing you want is to sell a client and they, get on board with you to move forward. And then, a month later, you're like, oh, this is going to cost $500,000 more than what you think it is or what your budget was. And I knew your budget going into it. I should have told you that to begin with. Or design is going to take 6 months versus the 2 months you thought it was going to take. And, we like to be very upfront about kind of, okay, well, we definitely need to revisit your budget because in this time it's, it changes daily.
Yeah.
So
tell me about that inflection point where you said, I'm not going to be an interior designer anymore. I'm going to be a project manager. Was it an easy transition? Were you nervous about it? How did that happen?
So it's an interesting story. So I had my first project management job was with Cressa, and I was working for Mark Ayers. And they were a client of mine. They've been a client for a couple of years, and we had a great relationship and kind of worked with that whole team. And Mark came to me one day and he said, you should be a project manager and you should come work for us. And I was like, you're crazy. Like that? No. I went to school for design, architecture. This is what I'm doing. I'm not. So for 4 months, we had this conversation and he kept coming back. You're going to be a great project manager. You should come work for us. And then one day I just kind of had a moment where it was just like, I am not having fun anymore. Like I am not doing the parts of the project that I love. And this isn't fun. And I texted him that night and I said, is the offer still on the table? And he said, yes. Are you taking it? And I was like, I am. He goes, the offer letter will be in your mailbox tonight.
Wow.
And I printed it out that night and signed it and no turning back. And, Mark was a great person to work for. He's still a mentor today. He's a hard boss. So, but he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about, commercial brokerage. I've got my broker's license because of him. So he really kind of pushed me into that project management role and said, you're going to be really good at this. You just need to give yourself a chance.
Sure.
So that's kind of how I fell into project management. So I started working with them and it was, 13 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So
no regrets.
No regrets. Not at all. Not at all.
Awesome. So do you feel that you make that kind of decisions, which, are changing careers is a big decision? Do you feel that you just go for it and you make it work, or do you think about it and doubt, or how's that process internally for you?
Yeah, for that particular decision, I had two decisions in my kind of work life. There was that decision to kind of jump from design to, to project management, and I always knew, like, for some reason, I always knew that I was going to do design for a while. And then I needed a different challenge. Yeah. I was going to get to a point where it was just felt like mundane and like, I needed something new. And I'd gotten to that point, but didn't realize it and didn't really know didn't really think about what the options were or where I could go with it. And, and Mark made me that offer and it was like, well, I'm still young. I was, in my mid 30s and I'm like, I've got a, young child. If I go ahead and like take the leap and try it for a year, I can always go back to design.
Sure.
It's not the end of the world if I don't like it or if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So just kind of, that one was kind of taking a leap of faith. And then when I started Strata, 11 years
How long were you a project manager for other companies before starting?
Yeah, so I was a project manager for 2 other commercial real estate firms, but it was actually the same group of people.
Yeah.
So I was with the Cressa office, and then that office was purchased by Savills in 2016, and I was with Savills for 5 years after that. So about 11 years total.
Okay.
With those 2 firms, but it was the same group of people who are fantastic people that I still, work with today, and they're great. I'd kind of been doing that for a while, and the way that Savills worked is I basically worked like a broker. So I worked on commission. I didn't have a salary, so it's kind of the eat what you kill sort of mentality, which was great in good times and scary in bad times. Yeah. But that was also a challenge. So that was fun. And I'd always thought like there's got to be what's next. Like what do I want to do next? And started thinking about, well, do I want to just kind of go off and do this on my own and, work with kind of a select group of clients and, kind of make something else. And I met Russ, a very good friend of ours, introduced us. We didn't know each other at all. Introduced us.
Where did you guys meet?
So Chris Butlak introduced us.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? You two are both kind of, you love your jobs, you love what you do, but something's missing for both of you. And you are opposite enough that marriage could work.
Yeah.
So he introduced us, and then he said, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yes.
So if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so we met, and, we're very upfront and very frank with each other about this is what I want. And he said, this is what I want. And those two things kind of married up. And we met over the next, every couple of days and said, I've kind of got a timeline in my head of I want to, before the school year starts, I want to have started a new business and kind of get that rolling before my son goes into his junior year of high school. And so we had some very frank, very direct conversations with each other before we ever knew anything about each other.
Sure.
And, we both kept unbeknownst to either one of us, we both walked away and then would come back to the meeting and said, okay, well, he doesn't agree to these three things, then I'm out.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, he would agree to those two things.
Yes.
And we both kind of had that back and forth. And then there was one day it was like, are we doing this or what? Are we going to give this a try? And, his skills are very complementary to mine and mine are very complementary to his. All the things that I'm really good at is he's not or, unsure about. And all the things that he is great at are not my strong suit.
Sure.
So, we very clearly kind of got some lines and roles that work. So we knew each other for about 7 or 8 weeks before we decided to start Strata.
Wow, that's crazy.
We met in May and we launched Strata August 1st.
Wow.
And it has been fantastic.
Yes.
So we came out of the gate with, a great team of friends behind us that said, here, I'll help you get launched. I'll help you get projects and I'll help you get started. And it's just been kind of, on the uphill swing ever since.
Wow.
So,
I'm not surprised because I dated my wife for 2 months. We got engaged.
After 2 months?
2 months.
Wow.
We got married 8 months later. And that was 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So
sometimes
there are some things because I think I am a very rational person. Like I think pros and cons and, kind of evaluate and I take my time to think. And when I met my wife after 2 months of dating, for some reason, I was just thinking, okay, that's it. And I had no explanation. In my mind, I was thinking, well, you should date for some years and, try. It was in my heart, there was no doubt.
Yeah.
And I never had that experience before because I always go by my head, not by my heart. But I had this certainty that I didn't care. It's like, no, that's it. I know it. And when you know it, when you know, you know.
Yeah. Well, and with Russ and I, like Russ is the rational thinker and he is the process person and he's the one who makes lists and overanalyzes. And that is what we need. And then I am the person with the big idea and let's jump in head first and we'll work it out along the way.
Yes.
And, when we kind of collided and met, we had kind of balanced each other out on that. And, when it was a big step for him to kind of jump in with me and a big step for me because we didn't know each other.
Sure.
And, we didn't really, we'd known each other for 7 weeks.
Wow.
It wasn't very long. But we've been a great match and we make great business partners and,
So tell me about, okay, you guys made the decision. We're going to do this. How do you get your first project? Like, how do you get the ball rolling?
So we were very fortunate to have some very good friends in the industry, general contractors, brokers who heard, hey, I know she's going out on her own. I'm not supposed to know this yet. We haven't announced it. Got this project that they'd be perfect for. I'd like to have them put in a proposal. And we're like, we don't even have an operating agreement. We don't even have business cards. We don't have a name yet.
Yes.
And you want us to put it. So we went on an interview for a law firm, and we didn't have a name. Like, they asked me what the name of the company was, and I said, we're still working on that. So, and the client took a huge risk on us, and they will always be one of our best references.
Wow.
Moving forward. But it was a broker and a general contractor that said, you should really have a conversation with these two. They complement each other well.
Was that a client that they knew you guys before?
No.
So what do you think they felt when they talked to you guys that gave them that confidence?
I think it was just the synergy between their team and us.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of clicked. Like, we walked in the room, and kind of, how you start the interview, everybody's very formal and very kind of buttoned up and, very nervous. And then, about 20 minutes into it, we were laughing and joking with each other.
Yeah. And,
what we didn't know 2 months after we got hired is that our client is Russ's neighbor.
Oh, wow.
Lives in the neighborhood. So there's kind of that connection too. But they, I guess, it just kind of clicked. We just, felt like it was going to be a great synergy. We pushed them on some things in the interview, like, well, have you guys thought about this? Because they showed us their floor plan, and we're like,
yes.
Well, here's some things we would maybe think about.
Sure.
And they were like, wow, you're critiquing us in the first interview? Like, we haven't even hired you yet. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's what
and that's
do.
one of the competitive advantage you guys have by you being an interior designer, because there are many project managers that they have never been architects or designer. So that I feel that gives you a different perspective, that you can go deeper, at least in that aspect, on helping your clients. Yeah,
we feel the same way. And Russ has a mechanical engineering background, so he really understands the systems part of things, and the process part. So we have a client who has some pretty high mechanical demands, and he can speak that language with the client and the engineer to say, here's what we need to do, and then explain it to the client in layman's terms. So he's got that skill too. But with coming from the design background and kind of having done that really kind of interior architecture for so long, I've kind of got that mindset, and can say, hey, did you think about this? Or, this IT room probably needs to be a little bit bigger, guys. Let's think about what's got to go in there. And so, kind of building relationships with the architects that way. So.
Yeah, and that's like the most basic way to help somebody, and it's you're adding value to them without expecting anything in return. Because if you don't have the project, there is nothing they owe you. But I always say life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. Mm-hmm. So you're just giving your expertise.
It's an opinion,
which can help them. They can do things with them. So that's like a basic human trait. When somebody gives you something, you feel like you want to return.
Yes.
But when you just give, that's gonna come back somehow eventually. Yeah. And that's how I try to add value to society and to people. I just try to help as much as I can within the limits, and that's gonna come back to me. I don't know how.
One of the things when Russ and I started Strata that we were both totally on the same page with was kind of what kind of clients do we want to work with, and it was we want to work with people we like. We want to work with fun people.
Yes.
And, work shouldn't be a chore. We want to go in and have fun.
Yes.
And those are the types of clients and the teams that we want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then we started talking about how do we give back? How do we give back to our community? Because we're in Charlotte, and, we want to grow our city and be an asset to, the community. So one of our big client bases is nonprofits. Because they don't typically have the funds to, hire a project manager, or to kind of we give them that same white glove service that we give to all of our clients. So we've been very fortunate to do, I think it's 9 nonprofit projects of varying scale and size, over the last, 18 months or so, some very small, some bigger, and just kind of help them navigate the process. And they, nonprofits are the most grateful, nice clients that you will ever work with. And it's not sexy work, but it's meaningful work. And you feel like it's our way of kind of feel like we're giving back to the community.
Yeah.
By reaching out to those nonprofit clients and sourcing them and wanting to do business with them. Because it's not sexy work. It's not like a big fancy corporate office. It's not, necessarily photograph worthy sometimes, but it's like, it's a great feeling and it makes us feel good to do it.
Yeah. And to me, that's design, that's still design, that's still valuable.
Absolutely.
Part of my mission with the Power of Design podcast is to open people's mind that design is more than artistic expression or visual or aesthetic value, which we see it, right?
Yeah.
We're attracted to beauty, like visual, formal, and we like it. But there is beauty in designing a project of how are you helping the process, designing a good contract, designing a good business model. That's design because you're still using elements. There is a process to it. You need to refine it. There is an end result. And that's where, I feel that I want to help people say, a lot of people say, oh, no, I'm not a good designer. Well, maybe you are. It's just you're designing with numbers.
You haven't found your niche yet. Or
Yes.
You haven't found and maybe what you think it is not design really is. So we worked on a homeless shelter for a roof above, and it was like one of the most fulfilling projects because in the end, over 100 men had beds for the night.
Yeah.
And they continue to have beds for the night. And they're in programs to help them, progress forward. And, we were a part of that.
Sure.
And so that's like something that, it's like, wow, look what, it's like, look what this team did together. It's like, we're helping the community.
Yes.
So
look what us taking this risk created for others.
Yes.
And that's incredible. One of the things that I really value about having your own business is that it forced me to grow and be a different person and evolve, because I cannot be the same person I was 2 years ago because my challenges are very different. And what do you think is more exciting about anything that is not project management for you, that is business related? Anything that is legal, money, payroll, all these things that sometimes you didn't know they were going to be there.
I think that a lot of that is in Russ's wheelhouse.
Yes.
And that's kind of part of the reason I didn't want to go off on my own. I wanted a business partner because I know I have weaknesses and I know I have strengths, and I needed someone to kind of balance those things. But from a kind of non-project management part of things, not in a project, it's really the networking and the business development and the marketing piece and doing things like this.
Yes.
With you, kind of stretching my boundaries and finding those new challenges and ways to kind of meet new people and expand our horizons. And I was fortunate enough during COVID to do a leadership seminar and just got a ton of value out of that. And it was one of those leadership seminars where it's like you're very open with the group and it's, you're learning a lot about yourself. And I think at owning your own business, you do learn a lot about yourself. You learn about kind of, how far can you take things? What are your strengths and your ability to be able to learn new things and realizing what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah, and your weaknesses, they surface fast.
They surface really fast.
Yes.
And that's why it's great to have a great business partner whose strengths are your weaknesses.
Yes.
But yeah, they do. They surface very fast and kind of trying to figure out a way to overcome those weaknesses or learning how to, mitigate those weaknesses.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, We are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
I don't remember where was it. It was one of these, business courses that I've taken. But there were some statistics about like small businesses. They make up about like 90% of the economy. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like this country is made out of small businesses. These massive corporations, they're a few percentage of all the money moving the country. And that's when you see that people like you, that they take the risk, that they're trying to do the best for their family, for the clients. That is stressful, that is hard, that is difficult. That's the country.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people doing the same thing that you're doing.
And it's scary. Like I remember when I started my career, I never wanted to own my own business. Like that was not an aspiration my first 10 years in a career, 15 years in a career. And I always wanted to work for somebody and be a part of a team and, kind of make my own path. And, when I got into, on the commercial real estate side of things and into project management, I never realized that I was actually running a business within a business.
Yes.
So, by the time I got kind of 10 years out of it, I was like, well, you know what? I actually can do this. So, and over COVID, my sister and I started a business together doing, residential real estate and rental properties, which I never thought my sister and I do something together. Like that's unheard of. So we're complete opposites. But it's been great as well. And, also, being a single mom, I'm the sole provider for my son and, jumping off this ledge and kind of jumping into your own business and kind of being at sink or swim, it's scary. Because my son's 18, he's going to college in 6 months and, figuring out that whole path. Being an entrepreneur is exciting and challenging and, it's that fun challenge that I was missing. And it just continues every day. There's always a new challenge.
Yeah. What do you think are the most important things you have learned about yourself in the last, 2-3 years?
I think I've really learned what my strengths and weaknesses are. Like there are certain things that I am just not good at and I procrastinate on them. Yeah. And, Russ will poke me and he's like, you need to do this, you need to do this. And, it's really kind of given me some insight into me and kind of what I am good at and what I am not good at. Yeah. And, it's pushed me to learn and to be more open to other people's ideas and, to understand that everything doesn't have to be perfect because I am a perfectionist. It doesn't always have to be perfect. Yeah. And kind of getting to that point. So I think those are kind of some of the big things I've learned.
Wow. Where do you think that perfectionism come from?
I would say probably my father. He was, I grew up in a very blue collar family. My dad was a fireman and, he had a house painting business and he worked construction. So he was, very, he always worked. And everything had to be, he worked very hard. Yeah. And my mother was always very, very organized and she kind of took care of the house and took care of the kids and we had a routine and everything had its place and everything had to be, just so. And I think between the two of them, kind of the work ethic that my dad had and kind of the, everything has to be in its place sort of thing with my mom. I think that's where it comes from. And my mom would tell the story. She's like, yeah, your room was organized. You had your dolls and your stuffed animals organized by color and by size from the age of 3. Yeah, so,
that's how my daughter is.
She's going to be a great project manager one day. So,
I want her to be an architect.
She can be a great architect. I know. Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, that's what I was saying, that being a business owner forces you to face yourself. Yes. And to me, that's incredible because you can ignore yourself and your weaknesses and what you need to change forever. But when payroll is on the line, where when you need to pay other people, when you're responsible for things, you have no choice but to improve. You have to do it.
And you have to learn new things. You have to learn how to do these things that you relied on other people to do because you had that team, and now it's just the two of you, and somebody's got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's
one of the things that I know I struggle with is I'm always looking for, the next thing, the next level, the next project. And I have a really hard time celebrating my own wins. and sometimes people talk about me in a way that I'm like, do you really think I'm like that? And like, I don't even believe it. Like, really? Like, I want to meet that person. Like, and that's something that I'm working on myself. And it's like giving credit to myself, celebrating what I've done, because I do one project that I never done before and it goes well, and I want to do another one bigger, and that drive is interesting and fun because there is progress. But at some point, my own internal experience about myself, it's not improving because it's just do this and then do it the next one, do it the next one.
Well, it's that kind of constant drive to keep everything flowing. And okay, I finished. This was great, but I've still got to do these other 10 things.
Yes.
So I do think it's important to kind of take a step back. And Russ has taught me this. Like, we have once a month, we have Strata Happy Hour where we sit down and we have a glass of wine and a beer and talk about the wins for the month and celebrate, hey, look what we've done.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I would have thought to do, because I'm just kind of, let's move on. Okay, we finished this. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next thing. And it's like, no, we need to take a minute and like celebrate and like be grateful for what we have and what we put together.
Yeah.
So,
there was one day where maybe 2 years in, my wife said, why don't you stay home today? I'm like, no, I have to go to work. And she's like, you don't have to go to work. You're boss. You can stay here. Do you have a deadline? Is somebody waiting for you? No. I'm like, no, but I have to go to work.
Yeah.
And that day it clicked for me. I'm like, man, I'm in this like still like employee mindset that I have to go to work. And if I'm not working, then I feel irresponsible because I'm not doing what I should have done.
I think that's that entrepreneurial mindset of you've always got to be doing something to promote the business and to promote kind of moving things forward and promote the growth. Because I feel the same way. It's like if I'm not working, then it's like, or if I take a half a day off, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasted a half a day. Like there's all these things I have to do. And I'm like, in reality, it's like, the world's not going to end.
Maybe not. Yes.
But I feel like it is, but it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. In December, I went back to Colombia to visit my family, and I took 18 days off. I was in Colombia for 18 days. Never done in my professional life. Never. Like 18 days. That was crazy. And I was so nervous about doing that. I prepared for like 6 months for that day.
How many days did it take you to finally relax?
Oh, probably 14. Yes, it was. Yeah, it took me a long time. But I got to the point like, okay, everything is fine. It's taken care of. Nobody's calling me. I mean, I still have email. If something is going on, I will know.
Yeah.
And there are no problems. I'm like, oh wow, this is possible. Yeah, but when I came back, I was really excited to come back to work.
Yeah. So that's a lot of time.
I know.
So I don't think I think the most I've ever taken in my entire career is like 10 or 12 days.
Yeah.
And that felt like a lot. But I was overseas and I didn't have email. So it took about 3 days and I'm like, there is absolutely nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Like it just is. So,
yeah. And, I talk about a lot about, I do a lot of workplace work, which I know you guys do as well, and office, and this is kind of what all adults do. You go to school and you graduate, and then you join a company, and then you work for 40 years, and at 60 or 65 you retire. So your life theme is to go to a workplace 40 hours a week for 40 years, and that's amazing. You made it.
Yeah.
And there is a lot about. I think that comes from previous generation and baby boomers, where all your meaning as a person comes out of what you do, your work, and that's why every time you meet someone, hey, this is my friend. He's an architect. He's a doctor. He's a lawyer. You need to kind of validate the persons being by what they do. And we're not what we do. We are who we are. We just do things. And that's one of the things I'm using my work to exercise, which is to, for example, as a designer, I'm passionate about doing something, right? So I put a lot of effort and care into solving the client's problem. However, if the client doesn't like it, or there is a problem with it, or I make a mistake, I feel bad about myself. So is that detaching myself from the work? The work is the work. Who I am is who I am.
Right.
And there is a lot of seasons that I've gone through where I can't sleep because there is an issue. I can't sleep because for this. I'm like, that has nothing to do with me. It's just work.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best. And if there was a misunderstanding,
But I think too, as an entrepreneur, it's so hard to separate
I know
that because you're so invested in
that's the challenge
in the work.
Yeah.
And and it's your company and it's your reputation, and it's so hard to kind of separate that. And I have many sleepless nights where I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, I have to make a list.
I know.
And I have like bedside table, like I've got to write this down or I'm never going to get back to sleep.
Yes, I do something and I think it's horrible. I send emails to myself like 2 a.m.
I send emails to myself all the time.
And I go to come back to the office at 8 and I have like 10 emails from myself and I'm like, what did I do? And when I read them, I'm like, doesn't make sense. I don't need to worry about this.
I'm so glad to know that somebody else does that. I send myself at least 5 to 10 emails a day.
Yeah, no. And I don't like my emails at all.
It's like my to-do list.
Yeah.
But it's the reminder of, okay, there's something to be done here, and I've sent it to myself, so it's obviously important.
I know. So tell me about today's world. 2023, there is a lot going on. COVID happened, some years ago. We've been going through this massive fluctuation of, work, cost, construction cost, delivery, lead times. What do you think is the biggest challenge your clients are facing today?
I think it's really, what is the future of office? Because there's companies that have gone back to work and there's companies that haven't gone back to work yet. And, I think pre-COVID, there were a lot of companies that remote work was not an option. It was, you need to be in the office, you need to be with your team, you need to be, and it was just not an option. There was no flexibility. If your kid was sick, that was a sick day. It wasn't that I was, on a flexible schedule. And I think COVID proved to a lot of companies that remote work is possible. It's not the end all be all. It's a great perk. But coming out of COVID, it's, employers want employees back at the office, but they've also realized that there's a benefit to this flexible hybrid work schedule, that they don't necessarily need to be in 7 days a week, but the collaboration and the face-to-face meetings and with your team are still so important for really kind of building those relationships that you need to have with your team members to make a successful project or whatever it may be in whatever business, accounting or law or, whatever that may be. That face-to-face interaction is still so important.
Yeah.
But also having that, giving employees the choice of kind of that balance of, okay, well, if I have to take my kid to the doctor, then I'll just work at home today and catch up, and then I'll go into the office on Thursday and Friday. Or I know that my days to be virtual are going to be Mondays and Thursdays, and I'll work out my appointments those days. So I think I feel like it's created some lesser downtime for people taking those half days off and that sort of thing, because they'll be flexible and they're a little bit more willing to kind of, I'll just spend another hour catching up because I did this.
Yeah.
And it promotes a little bit more of a goodwill and a trust between the employer and the employee. And it's not for every employee. Some employees are built to work remotely and some employees are built to work in a hybrid type situation. And some employees really need to be in the office.
Oh, sure.
But I think it promoted kind of this trust between employee-employer relationship to be like, okay, well, I'm trusting you to say, we're going to have a hybrid schedule. This is what it's going to be. This is what I expect from you. You still need to come in and collaborate. We still want to see you. We still love your face. We want to come in. But, there's something to be said for kind of some of that heads down work that can happen at home too.
Yeah, and I feel that there is a lot of generational perspective, because usually the decision makers or people creating the policies, they're older than the people doing the work.
And they did the 8 to 5,
Right.
Monday through Friday,
And that's the
in
only
the
way
office.
they know how to do it.
Yeah. I read an interesting article. I forget where it was from, but it was basically kind of the millennial take on work. And it was, very much unlike how, my career has gone and kind of how I grew up. And it was like, if my boss is not going to give me flexible hours, then I'm going to go find something else that will.
Yeah.
And it's like just that simple for them.
Yes.
And it's, if I can't, do this or go exercise at lunch or whatever, if I don't have that flexibility to do that, or if I can't have these kind of sliding scale hours, then I'll just go find something else that does give me that. So I think employers with COVID and with kind of this younger generation have to be responsive to that.
Yeah.
And have to kind of meet some of those needs, which are for those of us who grew up in that you have to be in the office at 8 and you leave at 5 and you don't leave a minute before 5 o'clock. That kind of, that generation and mindset is hard to kind of get behind this everything is flexible sort of, mentality.
Yeah.
So, but there's a happy balance there.
Sure.
So, and every company has a different balance, and it's kind of finding out what it is. And there is, one of the biggest things we tell clients is there is no right answer.
Mm-hmm.
No one has got it figured out, and there's not one thing that works for everybody. You're going to try and fail and try and fail and try, and this is going to work for you. You've just got to figure it out what works.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of the project delivery, the traditional role of an architect? We use computers, technology, we create a set on PDF, we give it to a general contractor, they look at these PDFs, they build this thing out of traditional materials and construction methods. What do you think the future or the evolution of the delivery of projects is going to be in the future? Thinking about 3D printing, AR, Chat GPT, things that you put in there and it designs your house. How do you think that is going to evolve in the future?
I think there's a couple different avenues to go on that. Is the days of the client hires the architect does the design, you turn it over to the general contractor, they price it, they sub it out, they build it, and the client moves in. Those days are gone.
Mm-hmm.
With supply chain and cost, and it's really, and what we believe in is more of an integrated project delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So where we're bringing the contractor and the architect on at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
After we are engaged, those are the first two groups that are engaged right after that. And the contractor is working alongside the architect through the entire design process. Because with supply chain issues, if they know that there's a lead time issue and we've got to wait 50 weeks for an electrical panel, then the minute we know what those sizes are, they can order that.
Sure.
And get ahead of the game, and we're not pushing out the delivery date. And also from a value engineering perspective, with how costs are, and they're so volatile these days, is engaging subs at the right time so we can lock in pricing, and making sure that kind of what is being designed can meet the budget, because architects don't always know. You're designing something that's fantastic and great, but costs are changing daily. And contractors have a great pulse on that, but more of that integrated project delivery system to where the team is brought on board. And we're big proponents of we're going to bring AV and cabling and security. Those guys are brought in very early in design and kind of working together as a team. So you're not necessarily, the days of hard bidding are gone in my mind.
Yeah.
That if I never have to do a hard bid again, I would be ecstatic.
Yes.
It's let's pick the right team. Let's negotiate with the right people, pick the right group. From a client perspective, it's pick who you like.
Yes.
The people sitting at the table, these three groups, they can all execute your
100%.
project, but you're going to have like a synergy with one of them. And we're going to spend the next year together.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't like them now, you're not going to like them in a year.
Yeah.
And, pick the people that, you have that synergy with, and that kind of feeling that, hey, we can be a good team. And, and the projects that we've executed this way, it's, everybody's friends in the end.
Yeah.
And, it's everybody wants to work together again. And, it just makes for a much smoother project experience from our perspective.
Yeah, and that people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Exactly.
And sometimes we focus so much on the procurement, project management, comparison, all the hard mental analysis versus the humanness of the relationships. Because once you have the trust, I don't care about what they're doing or how they're doing. If I trust them, I know they're looking out not only for themselves, but for myself as well.
Right.
And that's all I need to deliver a successful project, to
Yeah.
have trusted partners.
Well, and if you can relay the client's vision, and you're interviewing and you're talking to them, and they're like, yeah, I think he gets it. Like, that's my guy. And you may be more expensive, but he gets it. That's going to save them money in the long run, even if you are more expensive, because you get their vision and you understand what they're going to do, and you've got that synergy with the team.
Yeah.
So,
And people don't work with you because they understand. They work with you because they feel understood. They feel that, okay, they are in my mindset. They know what I'm about.
Yeah.
That's something I try to do when I'm working with clients. Is what if that's my money? How will I use it?
Yeah.
You know, how am I going to be responsible using this money to get the best outcome that I can with this?
And our job is to push on you guys and to push on the contractors and to push on the vendors of, hey guys, this is actually in your scope to do, or, hey, okay, fine. It's not in your scope. What is the additional service? Let's make sure it's fair, and kind of be fair to everyone, and, be collaborative as a team, hold people accountable, but, also be fair to architects, contractors, the client. It's all about kind of creating that level playing field and making sure that everyone's speaking the same language throughout the course of the project, because architect and contractor speak is not owner speak.
Sure.
And we feel like we're kind of translators sometimes.
Yeah. Translation services.
Yes, exactly. Translation services.
Yeah. What kind of advice will you give, let's say, a young design professional, architect or interior designer, that they like what they do, but they feel like, man, I feel more aligned with client relationships, with things that are not traditional profession of what I'm doing, design. What advice will you give them to kind of go to the next level?
Ask questions. People don't know that you don't understand, or you don't know where you want to go, or you're like thinking something unless you ask. So there's no dumb question. It doesn't matter. And us who've been around the block, we've got questions too.
Sure.
So I say the most important thing is just explore and be curious, and ask questions of the person sitting in the room that's been doing this for 20 years, and say, how'd you get where you are today?
Yes.
And kind of figure out because everybody's story is so unique. Your story is so unique as to how you got from, Columbia to here, and how you've been so successful. Everybody's story is unique, and something may resonate with that person to say, oh, I never knew that could be a path. I was talking to a young designer a couple of months ago, and they were just like, I never knew that there wasn't a path that wasn't this.
Yes.
Like, I went to school for this. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
But in reality, there's all of these things you can do with an architecture degree, an engineering degree. And, most project managers don't have, we've got all kinds of random degrees.
Yes.
So it's not, you don't go to school to be a project manager. So you kind of, as a lot of us have, kind of fell into it, and you found a niche and you figured out you were good at it, and that's where you landed. So, but ask questions. That is the biggest thing.
Huge.
Is like
I
learn
remember
from other people.
I remember being there where I was panicked to think that somebody was going to ask me something and I didn't know the answer. And the day I realized it's okay not to know.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, I'll get back to you, and
That's
give me a couple of days. I was like, can you do that?
That's a piece of great advice.
Oh my
It's
God,
like,
that's
if I'm talking to a younger person, I'm like, it's fine to say you don't know.
Yeah.
But go back and figure it out, and then come back to the person and tell them what the answer is.
Yeah.
Don't leave them hanging, and don't make something up.
Yes.
So, it's fine to say you don't know. No one's going to know everything. So.
Awesome. Well, Amy, thank you for your time today. I'm very happy and excited. Today is Women in Construction Day.
Yes.
International Women Day. So that was perfect timing. And I'll do my best to release this episode as soon as possible, so we're still within the Women's Celebration Day. And I wish you the best. I know you guys are doing a lot of great things. I know how hard you guys have been working, and I really admire and appreciate all the opportunities you guys have sent to us. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. So we love working with you and your team, and definitely building that partnership is definitely in our future.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content. And find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.